What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to Civic Minded. Today we are going to be doing something I wish I didn't have to do on this car, but I did, and I was finally able to. I'm glad it's over. And that is converting the rear drum brakes that this car came with to rear disc brakes. So a little bit of background on the rear disc brakes for the 9th Gen Civic. As you guys know, this is a 2014 hybrid, which means that it originally came with rear drum brakes. If you have an LX, hybrid, SE, and I think natural gas, you had rear drum brakes. Otherwise, you have rear disc brakes already. You don't need to do this. Because the car was available with both drums and discs, conversion is, on paper, relatively straightforward. It's slightly more complicated when you actually get into it, but we'll get into that during the video. I don't know how many other people have done this. I know that one member of the 9th Gen Civic forums has. That's actually kind of where I got most of my information. I'll leave a link to that forum post in the description. I cannot find any other videos about it, so this will be the first one, a YouTube first, and I'm gonna try to show you as best I can how I did it. Now, before we get started, a quick disclaimer. This is a very, very physically taxing mod, and it is 100% mechanical. There is no technology, no electronics, no electrical that we're going to be changing, so this is not my area of expertise. I am pretty good, pretty handy with maintenance, but as far as mechanical mods, I'm pretty sure this is going to be the only one I ever do to this car. You guys know I've got the dimming rearview mirror, the rain sensor, the turn signal mirrors. That is my area of expertise. I've got a degree in electrical engineering, so I can do those things well. This, I'm sorry to say, not so much. So I'm going to try to present it to you in the best way that I know how. I kind of learned the process on this side, and I filmed all my footage on the passenger side. So that's where all the demos are going to be, on this wheel. But as always, Civic Minded assumes no responsibility for damage to your vehicle or person. You do this mod at your own risk. You will not be able to drive your car at any point during this mod. You're going to have basically everything in your rear wheel well apart. For me, this took me a good 2 days, and I would say it was slowed down by a couple of stripped bolts, which you will see later. But I would recommend that if you're going to do this, if this is, especially if this is your first mechanical mod, start on a Saturday and finish on a Sunday. And make sure you can find a place that will do an alignment on a Sunday, because your car will definitely need an alignment after you do this. Alright, with that said, here is a closer look at the new brakes. These are the exact brakes that would be found in an EX or an EXL, so I'm basically one set of power seats away from having an EXL. But that's a different video. So when I was planning this project, I broke it into 3 basic components, so 3 basic groups of parts. So there are basically 3 groups of parts that are different between the drum and disc brakes for this car. The first is the parking brake cable. That's this right here. You need 1 cable for each side, you need 1 of those bolts for each side, and you need 1 clip similar to that for each side. This is the one from the drum brakes for the brake line, but the disc brakes add an extra one to the parking brake link. You can see it right there. Second, you need 1 caliper, 1 rotor, and 2 pads for each side of the car. I would say your best bet for that is RockAuto.com. They have a kit that includes everything: the calipers, pads, rotors, even the brake hardware. They even have the copper washers for the banjo bolt. And it's only like $200 or something like that, so I would say that's your best bet. The calipers are rebuilt, the pads, rotors are all brand new, so you get new brake parts, you get basically new rear brakes. It's fun. Lastly, the rear knuckles are different, and this is the part that will affect alignment. So the rear knuckle is basically what the hub is bolted onto. You can see this is the part that's replaced, this is original, this is the part that was replaced. You can get a better look down here. You can see this thing is a little bit dirtier and maybe a little bit more corroded than the rest of the car. I would say if you're willing to pay for that new, I'm not going to stop you, but if you can find it used in relatively good condition, get that instead of buying it new, because they also sell the hub separately, and the hub is different between drum and disc. So I would say if you can find one on eBay or LKQ, do it. That's in good shape, obviously. Maybe from a vehicle with front end damage. And that's it. We don't need to change any bolts or anything like that on the rear knuckles. Okay, I sorta lied here. There is a bracket that holds the brake hose on each knuckle, and a bolt that holds that in, and of course a bolt that holds the brake hose to that bracket. Your knuckles may come with those already, they may not. In my case, the left side came with it, the right side did not, so I had to order it. Here are the part numbers for those, just in case yours do not come with them. Alright, let's get into the mod. Sorry for the long intro, but it had to be said. Anyway, the aforementioned forum post recommended that we not take apart the rear drum brakes. We instead remove the knuckles with them on, so that's what I did. That would mean removing the parking brake cables from the inside of the car. I would recommend doing that first, because for this mod you're going to be getting under the car and you're likely not going to come out very clean, so don't damage your nice interior, don't get it all dirty. Get the parking brake disassembled while you're still clean. Alright, so before you even lift the car, if you park with the parking brake on, like I do, put your car in park, or if you have the manual, put it in gear. Just release the brake and kind of let the park gear lock. So the car just kind of rolled backwards a bit, but then locked. So you're going to lock that, pull the parking brake again. Then you are going to want to chalk off the front wheels like so. We're going to have the rear wheels in the air with no parking brake in a minute here, so I want to at least crack the lug nuts first. So we're going to lift the rear of the car. Jack point is that protrusion right there, and you can put the jack stand, I think, anywhere on the rail. That's what I'm going to do. Very straightforward, and if you've got the hybrid, be sure to pry the hubcap off with a pry tool or something, and then you'll have your 5 19mm bolts. They're not on that tight. Use a breaker bar, get them off. Alright, so now coming inside the car, we're going to undo the cables from the parking brake handle. First thing we need to do, if you have a 13 or newer, this piece of rubber here, just pull up on this tab, pull it out. That will reveal a Phillips head screw. 2012, that screw should just be there already. And make sure whatever you've got plugged in here, you unplug first. You're just going to want to remove that screw, then get another pry tool, put it under here, and pry up to remove this entire piece. With that out, you're going to want to turn the car to position 2, hit the brake, move the shifter back a bit, and then put the shifter back further, and that will reveal 3, I think, well, most likely 3 electrical connectors in the back. This one's easy. That's the USB, just squeeze it. This one's HDMI. If you got the 1312, you just have a regular aux here. You're just going to want to squeeze these tabs here, pull it out, which I need 2 hands for. And the power, I always have trouble with this one. I believe it's a tab on the bottom that you just squeeze and do that. Cool. Alright, next we need to remove the cup holder. To do that, open up your center console. Then you should be able to just pry it up like that. Lift it out, set it aside, and that will reveal access to our parking brake cables. So that bolt down there with the arrow is what we need to remove. So I'm gonna try to find a way to do that. So I found the best strategy for this was to remove the back cover of the center console from the back seat. That's very easy. Just get your pry tool underneath one of the edges there and pry it outward. It literally just snaps in. Then get a super long extension and a universal joint and a 10mm socket. And you can either use a ratchet, or if it's toward the end, you can turn it by hand. Turn that counterclockwise and loosen it. So try to keep everything together. There is a nut, it's similar to a differential shaft lock bolt. I have no idea what it's called. And then that little hook there. And if you have to reach down here, wear gloves, because there are a lot of sharp things down there. Anywho, this should, yeah, evidence right there. I'll hide that. So this should just lift free, and now we should be able to just rotate this. So we can, you see how this works. This cable rotates over to this notch here, and it lifts out through the top. Just like that. That just comes off, set it aside with everything else. And that's pretty much all that holds the link on the inside, so now we're going to go ahead and remove it on the outside of the car. It is held on by, I believe, 3 bolts. This is one of them. It's just on the trailing arm. It is a 12mm. On kind of tight, so it's on kind of tight to start, but it's, you shouldn't need a breaker bar. The next one is right by the splash shield under there. The last one is further down there. On the left side, they are covered by this, plastic, so there's just a couple of plastic pop rivets. I already did that side, but just a couple plastic pop rivets, take those out. And you don't have to take the whole thing off, you can just peel it down. Well, you should be able to just peel it down. But we'll get these off, and then I'll show you what to do from there. Alright, and you see this grommet here? That's where the brake link goes into the car. It is covered by that aluminum splash shield there, or heat shield rather. That is held in by 2 10mm bolts and 1 10mm nut. I've taken those off. You don't have to take it all the way off, you can just slide it down. You can see the holes for the bolts, maybe. The holes for the bolts are right there, and the stud for the nut is right here. Do this with your exhaust cold, obviously. And then to get this grommet off, get something like a flathead screwdriver or a pry tool and just like squish it, pull it out. And inside the car, well, I'll show you inside the car. Here are those grommets inside the car before I took either of them out. Very straightforward, works like any other grommet. You just push the side in and push the grommet out, push the link out. Over here, this holder, the links just slide out of them from the back. That you don't need to remove any bolts for that. With that out, we need to go ahead and take off the other two items that are still holding this in besides the bolts. They are this brake line and this ABS sensor. We're gonna do the ABS sensor first just because the brake line is obviously a bit more involved. The only things holding it in are these two clips here, one there, and then one 10mm bolt right there. A little bit of dust under there, but there's the sensor. Worth noting that the sensor between the drums and discs is exactly the same. In other words, we're going to be reusing the sensor, so there's no need to unplug it. Now, as far as the brake line goes, I'm going to recommend that you assemble the caliper, just the caliper, not the entire thing. Assemble the caliper assembly with the hose so you can quickly move it over, so to speak. So, we have a banjo bolt there, 2 copper washers. The banjo bolt gets torqued to 26 foot-pounds. So, and also make sure you've got the correct side. The caliper is going to be facing outward like this, with both the banjo bolt and the bleeder valve up. So, I'm gonna go ahead and get this set up, and I'll show you what to do. All right, I've got the caliper hung like that, with a bungee cord on the coil spring. The main thing you want is you want it out of the way of the suspension bolts. We're going to need to remove this one over here, and this one. The one over here we're not going to worry about because, well, the caliper's not going to come close to it. You also want this to be able to come up here with no pressure on it. So, to remove this flare nut, we will use a 10mm flare nut wrench. So get that on there. And before we do that, we need to remove this clip down here. This clip is on rather tight, so be ready to brace yourself against the wall. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a flathead screwdriver like this, just pry out. This is coming off easier than the other one did, just like that. And it landed in my, no, it landed on the side of my catch pan, that's lucky. Yeah, put a catch pan down just because brake fluid's pretty nasty. But yeah, now I think it is just a matter of, cracking the flare nut and swapping the lines. So I basically just transplanted that flare nut from the old wheel cylinder to the new caliper. Yeah, brake fluid is going to come rushing out, but it's all part of the fun involved. So before you tighten down, I would recommend putting the clip back. I'll find the clip. Here's the clip. So just slide it in, and you're going to need to use a screwdriver to get it in because it is very, very tough to get in. Alright, so a few minutes have passed. This is really making me miss all the electronic mods I like to do, but it's in. What I ended up doing was I used my pliers. I got my pliers like that, and then I just squeezed, and it snapped in. After I had tapped it with my flathead screwdriver a little bit, so it's gonna take some time. I would say do this on a Saturday and get your alignment on Sunday, but now we get to do the fun part. We get to take the drum off. Alright, the first bolt I'm going to break loose is this one up here. It is a 14mm. Use a breaker bar. Okay, well I'm going to try to break it loose off camera with 2 hands. This one down here is a 17mm with a cam nut. So mind its position when you put it back so you can drive to the alignment shop. And then this one, another 17mm. Remove all 3 of those and be sure that you use like a jack or something to support the knuckle because it is going to just fall off after that. Well, I accidentally tightened that bolt and ended up stripping it, so I had to get a stripped bolt remover, but I had an extra, so that's off. This one, you're going to want to hold the cam bolt in place as you're loosening it, and this one you're going to want to like pull out as you're loosening it because the threads kind of stop. This is the bolt. So, yeah. Alright, let's get the new one on. Okay, we have all 3 of our new bolts in. If you need to transplant this from your old knuckle, you can. This cam bolt, I tried to get it, it's really dusty back here. I tried to get it as close to the original as possible. So that's locked in. Before we torque, we need to put the weight of the suspension on, rather, we need to put the weight of the car on the suspension, so I'm gonna use a jack for that. Alright, so with the suspension loaded like that, all three of these bolts need to get torqued to 46 foot-pounds. And with that, you can go ahead and clean and mount your rotor. There is a threaded area in the hub next to two of the studs. Line it up with the holes that are slightly chamfered. That is where you will add your rotor set screws. Note that this is not a normal Phillips head. It is in fact a JIS screw. So this is why they strip when you try to use a regular Phillips head, but you can tighten them kind of snug with a normal Phillips head. That's what I did. I think the wheel's gonna keep most of this on anyway, so I don't have a lot of faith in them, but with that on, we'll go ahead and mount the caliper. The caliper bracket bolts go into these two bolt holes with bolt clips, and they're a bit rusty on mine, so sorry about that. The caliper bracket is going to go between the knuckle and the rotor, so it's gonna kind of sandwich in there just like this, and then those bolts are gonna get torqued to 55 foot-pounds each. The caliper bolts are also 14 millimeter. If you bought your calipers new or rebuilt like I did, you won't need to compress this piston here. If you bought them used, you can compress them easily. There's a tool that they make. You attach it to your ratchet and turn it, I believe, to the right, clockwise. So just do that, and then, well, we gotta put the hardware in first, but then we'll put the pads in. That is very straightforward. If you've never changed brakes before, Chris Fix has an awesome video on how to do it. Before we run the parking brake cable, why don't we bleed this caliper, because we did change it. We let some air in there. The bleeder valve is right here. If you're in one of the regular gas models, you'll just get like a bottle or something, a tube, crack the bleeder valve, hit the brakes a few times with the tube upward, and then close it. But if you're in the hybrid, well, you gotta use something a little different. I went to the dealer a few weeks after I did this mod, and you'll see why in a few minutes, and I learned that the hybrid actually requires a pressure bleeder due to the secondary reservoir. So if you have access to a pressure bleeder, definitely use it, and you can actually use that on the gas model as well. Instead, I used this vacuum bleeder that I got at Harbor Freight for like 30 bucks. It seemed to work okay. The brakes felt fine. The wheels stopped just fine. There was no indication that there was air in the system. But if this is ultimately what you need to do on your hybrid, I would say do it as like a temporary fix, and then when you get to the alignment shop, have them bleed with a pressure bleeder. I might even recommend going to the dealer for alignment. Any bleed is better than no bleed. So if you have to use this tool, just put the end of the nozzle on the bleeder valve, turn the bleeder valve counterclockwise, it's a 10 millimeter, use a flare nut wrench. Pump the pump a few times so the vacuum starts, and then close the bleeder valve as the vacuum is going, so there's no air in the system. That said, that done, the last thing we need to do is route the parking brake cable. This is what it looks like on the end that's going to attach to the caliper. You see there's a little hook there? It's going to go around that, but it's also going to go through that hole right there. Oh, and before I forget, let's just reinstall the ABS sensor. We can clip that in like that. Not do that. If you have the bracket that I mentioned earlier in the video, or you bought the bracket and installed it, you'll just snap the other clip into that, and then the ABS sensor itself is just a 10 millimeter bolt. It goes into the hole right there, exact same as the drums. Get that on the hook there, and then down here we have another one of these crazy clips that's impossible to get off. So this tab side goes up. I'll show you that on the cable itself, and this only fits in one way. It should be keyed. You'll see it once you install it, but get that on, and then the rest of the bolting is as the old one came off. Yeah, I'm definitely going to recommend that you use the pliers for that. You're going to save yourself a lot of time. So some of these slide around, so you can move them around as needed. This one is new. This one will mount, let me show you. The new hook goes right under the ABS sensor right here. It may help to get this one on first before putting this one on. The way this should look in the end is this should come out here, and the bolts past here are exactly the same as for the drum link. Everything's the same. I'll reinsert those clips here. You'll see exactly where those bolts are. Not difficult at all. I mean, kind of physically exerting, but not difficult. And the cable passes here. It goes under the ABS sensor, and then it passes underneath the knuckle, through this hole here on the bracket, up and onto the hook. Alright, so I've locked the two new cables into this harness here. You can see, there's an opening down there that you can slip the actual cables through. It's not difficult at all. Then you're just going to want to get the nut, put it on the end and then tighten until, you see how this is like really loose right now? Tighten until it feels tight when you pull it. And then, assuming you haven't put your wheels back on, go back outside and test the parking brake. Here's what should happen with the parking brake cable when you pull the handle. Something worth mentioning is when I first did this mod, I made it too loose, so I didn't have the nut on tight enough. I went to fix it, I took everything apart again, I went to fix it, and then I ended up tightening it too tight, and I didn't realize this until I was out on the road. And I realized it by means of a glowing brake rotor, a very bad smell, and the need to use a fire extinguisher in my garage. So when you're doing this, you want to make absolutely damn sure that the wheels can spin freely with the handle down. It may take a while for you to get it just right, but every time you adjust it, make sure that both wheels, not just one wheel, both wheels spin freely with the handle down. The integrity and safety of your brakes depends on you doing that correctly. So with everything done, the new calipers and brake lines in, the brake lines bled, the new pads in, you can go ahead and, before you get the alignment, you're going to obviously want to put your wheels back on and lower your car. All lug nuts get torqued to 80 foot-pounds, regardless of which trim you have. And then chances are your brake fluid's low, so you're going to want to come under the hood, open your brake fluid reservoir, and just make sure it's filled up like that. If you're in anything but a hybrid, you're going to have a max line that you're going to want to fill it to. If you're in the hybrid, just fill it up to its here and check the level in the back, which is damn near impossible. You can see the maximum there, but if you got it up to here in the hybrid, you should be good to go. Lastly, you're going to want to start the car and pump your brake pedal a few times until it feels normal. If you've got the hybrid, just pump the brake pedal until it feels normal. If you're in the hybrid, do not do this before calibrating your parking brake. Then it wouldn't be a bad idea to calibrate the ABS system. So to do that, go ahead and short pins number 4 and 9 in your OBD2 port. I will show that in more detail on screen. Then, if you've got the key, turn it to position 2. If you've got the button, push it twice without holding the brake. And then as soon as the car turns on and you see the diagnostic mode screen, you're going to hit the brake immediately. Just like that. Then watch the ABS light. When the ABS light turns off, release the brake. When it comes back on, put the brake down again. Turns off, release it. Then it will flash twice, indicating that your ABS system is recalibrated. If you've got the key ignition, you can just turn the key to position 2 with your foot on the brake, same thing. And your 9th gen Civic now officially has 4-wheel disc brakes, yay. So, once you've got your brake fluid filled, your ABS calibrated, and you've confirmed that the brake pedal is stiff, I would recommend that you go out into like a parking lot or something and then just speed up to like 5 or 10 miles per hour, and then just jam the brakes, make sure the car stops. Maybe even a little slower than that. Then I would recommend that you test the ABS, so get up to like 30 where there's no traffic and where it is safe to do so. Obviously, get up to like 30 miles per hour, maybe 25, and then just jam on the brakes. You'll probably feel a pulsation in the brake pedal, but wheel skidding should be minimal. Once you've verified that everything works, go get an alignment. I have had this mod installed for 6 or 7 weeks now, and the only issue I've had was from tightening the e-brake too tight and locking the rotor and having it overheat, so don't do that. Hopefully this video is helpful if you're looking to convert your 9th gen Civic to rear disc brakes. Like I said in the beginning, I am not a professional mechanic by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just handy. So if I can do this and have it work reasonably well, you can definitely do this. I'm currently working on another electronics mod. This one is probably going to come in a series of videos, 2, maybe 3. I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet. Instead, I'll leave this picture up, and maybe you guys can figure out what's coming. It's going to be a good one, I promise. It's going to be pretty... I don't know if anyone's ever tried it before. I know that there have been forum posts about it, but leave me a comment. Let me know what you think it is, and you'll hopefully see soon if you're right. As always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave a comment, shoot me a direct message, shoot me an email, aidenscivicminded@gmail.com. And as always, I will close with drive safe, have fun, and I will see you in the next one. Then it will flash twice, indicating that you'll start playing music and your brake system is recalibrated.